People generally assume that a sharp mind guarantees an easy, successful life. The expectation is that if you can understand the world, you can effortlessly navigate it. But the internal reality for highly analytical people often runs in the opposite direction. Seeing hidden patterns and questioning every social norm adds a layer of complexity that makes the daily experience noticeably heavier. This weight stems from the mechanics of the analytical loop. Instead of simply having a normal conversation and moving on, a deep thinker's mind captures the interaction, replays it, and dissects it. They find themselves examining minor decisions and standard daily exchanges for hidden meanings long after the moment has passed. Over time, a brain that structurally refuses to switch off or transition into a natural resting state generates severe mental exhaustion. The mind is constantly working, burning significant energy on events that are already over. What begins as a clear evolutionary advantage, the ability to perceive deeply, eventually mutates into a source of daily fatigue. The exact mechanism built to solve problems ends up draining the person using it. That exhaustion carries over directly into how a deep thinker plans for the future. Because an active mind projects every possible variable, it automatically surfaces all the potential risks and future problems associated with a single, simple choice. This diagram illustrates how the brain maps out a decision. The options rapidly branch out into hundreds of complex, overlapping outcomes. This gridlock occurs because the brain is processing a massive influx of data. The system stalls completely under the weight of its own data points. Heightened awareness, then, does not automatically guarantee better choices. Instead, it creates a self-imposed anxiety trap that can halt forward momentum entirely. The internal drain eventually spills over into external socialization. For the deep thinker, standard social rituals require a massive exertion of energy. Participating in small talk or navigating surface-level routines often feels physically exhausting. They often experience an intense craving for authentic, deeply meaningful exchanges. But because those interactions are rare, the analytical mind often finds itself surrounded by people, yet experiencing a very specific type of loneliness, the isolation of being mentally unmatched in a crowded room. This isolation is compounded by the chronic removal of social illusions. An analytical mind spots systemic flaws, detects inauthentic behavior, and points out the contradictions that most people comfortably ignore to get through the day. Once those comforting social illusions are stripped away, it becomes difficult to lower expectations. This leads to a persistent gap between the depth they want from relationships and goals and the reality that life provides. The more clearly the mind perceives the actual mechanics of reality, the more disconnected it feels from the surrounding world. This clarity creates a wedge between the thinker and their environment. This pattern of over-processing extends inward to feelings. Deep thinkers often possess an involuntary reflex to interrogate their emotions. They break them down and study them, instead of simply letting themselves experience the raw sensation in real time. Applying this analytical approach to negative states magnifies the pain. Baseline stress and standard sadness are suddenly dissected into their core components, making those feelings heavier and harder to shake off. This diagram of an emotional baseline shows how the mind can undermine its own positive states. Upward peaks of happiness are immediately met with downward pressure as the brain questions the feeling. By asking how long the happiness will last or why it is happening, the intense scrutiny flattens the experience almost instantly. It is a circular problem. The exact same intellect used to solve complex worldly problems is turned inward, actively dismantling the mind's own emotional peace. Up to this point, it seems as though a high-speed mind is an involuntary cage. But that same processing power, the ability to spot patterns and analyze systems, can also be turned inward to observe the thinking process itself. When you use your intellect to watch the mechanism work, you start to see that intelligence is a tool you can learn to direct, rather than a force that simply happens to you. Constant analysis requires an outward focus. It demands you obsess over external systems and potential futures. but that focus actively pulls you away from your current environment. Human happiness generally resides in the frictionless experience of the present moment. You have to be mentally present to actually feel the impact of a positive event. You cannot analyze your way into a feeling. Reclaiming mental peace requires a deliberate choice. You have to consciously step in and manually disengage the mind's default outward focus, pivoting from analyzing life to actually living it. The first step to finding this balance is recognition. When you catch your mind in the act of trying to process a current event, you must force it to simply experience that event as it happens. Step 2 is tolerating ambiguity. This complex asymmetrical structure misses pieces, yet features a glowing, stable border. Step 3 releases the demand for profound depth. Allowing mundane moments to remain simple lets them merge into the day's background without full mental investigation. Real intellectual control involves developing the self-aware strength to disengage. It means having the discipline to stop thinking once the analysis serves no further purpose.